The final one that we're going to cover here is Manheim Central, and boy, there is a lot to talk about. You got an hour to tune in for that one? We don't, but we are going to touch on Manheim Central because from what you got to cover, okay,
Yeah.
and again, we're going back to our earliest game is 1992. We talked about the Warwick night game. Yeah. That's the first of 10 District 3 championships in a row for Manheim Central from 1992 to 2001. And obviously, you said to me one of the other Fridays, that you just kept going to Hershey every year. What was that like?
Well, Mike Williams built a monster over there, plain and simple. Because prior to that, into the late 80s, there were no district playoffs.
Right.
I remember the one year Manheim Central, 13-0, with nowhere to go. Mm-hmm. And that was it. Then the district playoffs started falling into a format, and they win it in 92. They come back and win it in 93. It's like, oh, wow, look at this, back to back. 94, 95. I'm thinking, holy smokes. Again, we're talking high school sports because everybody's going to go through losing players to graduation, bringing up underclassmen, but with Manheim, they're just throwing people in there and they're blossoming and they're contributing, and boy, it was just a machine for that 10 years. And after Mike Williams had stepped down as head coach, I remember we were up at Hershey doing a district final, and he came up into the press box, and I said to him, Coach Williams, I just never got a chance to say thank you. And he's like, for what? And I said, for allowing us to hop on this gravy train that you guys provided for us for 10 years straight to become, because to me, there was no better place to call a game than Hershey Park Stadium, honestly.
Good evening and welcome to Hershey Park Stadium. Tonight, the site of the Class AAA District 3 final between Manheim Central and Conestoga Valley. With John Whitwer, I'm Eric May. Glad to have you along tonight.
You're up high, you got the windows open, and the crowd and the band and the cheerleaders and the crack of the pads. I mean, that is just the epitome of a football game. Mm-hmm. And to be doing it there for 10 consecutive years, it's like, I don't want to say it was just expected, but I was like, wow, we're going to Hershey again. And there was nothing better. Nothing better.
And those were really good teams too. And as I look at the district seeding, they were first, second, first. So I mean, they were the best teams too in the district at the time as well.
And there were a number of games that they played an LL opponent. CV, Cocalico, Garden Spot. Mm-hmm. So we would have seen a district champion regardless coming out of the Lancaster-Lebanon League. But the thing is, I'm looking down through the history of this, and they just ran roughshod over some of these teams.
Yes.
Not the Cocalicos and Garden Spots, but just the other schools outside of Lancaster County. They just steamrolled them.
Yeah, if you look at the stats here, it was the 10 years in a row, but I kind of stretched it out a little bit more, and actually they won 2 prior to and 3 after. So they won 15 titles in 17 years, and they beat 12 different opponents while they were doing that. They played CV 3 times in that stretch, and I think they played Muhlenberg twice. So yes, and also don't forget, the Conestoga Valley Manheim rivalry was pretty hot and heavy in the 90s too, right?
Oh yeah, because that was the time when Jim Contafio was the head coach. And you talk about a rivalry. That was intense. The coaching staff, the players, the fans, I mean, everybody was buying into it and taking part.
Yeah. They beat, actually, Conestoga Valley 23-14 in that 1992 year to start the run, right? And then a couple years later in 94, they beat them 41-6. So clearly Manheim was the better team. And then you go all the way to 2000, they beat them 30-10. So it had to feel like for Conestoga Valley, who kept throwing out good teams, that what are we going to do? We're run into a brick wall here.
Yeah.
Is there one of these that sticks out in the 10 years for you? Is there any game that really jumps to mind that, boy, that was an all-time classic?
The one where they played Susquehanna, I forget what year was that, 9?
Oh, that's after the run.
Oh, that's after the run.
Yeah, 2009 is, that was a good one, 35-29.
Yes.
But that's almost 10 years past the
run.
Well,
I just remember that one over in Manheim because like that Cocalico and Cheltenham game, I mean, the points were just being put up on the board in the blink of an eye, and that one came down to a late finish as well. But no, I just go back and I look at some of these scores and I just thought, wow, this was just a program that just flexed their muscles
They certainly did.
When it got to the postseason.
So the most surprising part was, you said, in the year after 2001, so in 2002, they lost. The streak broke. So I'd have to imagine that was pretty tough for that team. They lost to Lower Dolphin, you said, on
a late touchdown.
And then the next year in 2003, the magical year for Manheim Central, they come back and beat Lower Dolphin 38-0 in the 2003 District 3 Finals.
I'm sure there was bulletin board material. The box score from the previous year was probably put up.
And then that 2003 season, obviously, is when Manheim goes on to win the state championship, and obviously they had been beating their heads against the Berwicks and the Strathavens. What do you remember of the 2003 run when they finally get it done? Obviously the weather conditions, we could do a whole nother story on that, but just the fact that they finally got across the finish line.
Well, and beating Strathaven 3-0 in a game where the wind was just a nuisance for everybody, and it came down to a field goal. You could almost feel the sense of relief from Manheim that, what we finally got over this hurdle of, like you said, the Strathavens and the Berwicks, because there had been many a heartbreak leading up to that.
Yeah, I went back and looked at the brackets and all of that, and boy, it seemed like they were in the state semis every year. I mean, or at least in the quarters or semis every year, and you're that good, but you just never could beat those teams. I'm sure that was weighing on them. So 2003, big year for Manheim Central, and actually, I think it's the 20-year anniversary of that coming up here. So maybe we should have a chat with them when playoff time rolls around.